I just had to appear in court. The stupid thing with the police and them trying to ban me from owning any weapons, that's still going on. Problem is I'm still waiting for the psychiatric assessment from the psychiatrist, so I just had to explain to a judge that I have to wait on that assessment until they can kind of make a ruling on it.
I think it's really positive that in the 21st century, people with serious mental health problems come on the internet and talk about them. That didn't happen in any other century. It didn't happen just a few decades ago. You didn't get the perspective of people who suffered things like hallucination. And Vegangains, I think, is doing something really positive by coming on the internet and talking about what it's like to be someone who suffers from hallucinations. Whatever his underlying medical condition may be, I don't know. I assume I will never know. Maybe he will get a diagnosis. I know he's had MRI scans done and that sort of thing. That's certainly very positive. Now, on the other hand, I think even if you just asked Richard this, Richard is Vegangains, if you described his symptoms that he has and you said, Richard, somebody else who has this checklist of symptoms and problems, do you think they should be stockpiling weapons? Do you think they should be carrying a knife when they go around town? Do you think they should be doing these things that you are doing by your own account, by your own description? If somebody with this checklist of symptoms was saying things on the internet, such as you've been saying in terms of making threats against people and so on, do you think that would be a problem? Now, I think just 1 year ago, I think he would have been kind of affable and self-effacing and would have said yes. He would have admitted it's a problem when people who are crazy, or even people who diagnose themselves as crazy, because again, to give him credit, he does diagnose himself as having some kind of serious mental disorder. I think 1 year ago he would have said that yes, it was a reasonable concern for someone with such serious mental health problems to be acting out in this way. So it's a bad sign, we can say that. I think that just 1 year ago, he would have been self-effacing enough to recognize, yeah, this is a problem. He would see it as a problem in others, and therefore he'd be willing to see it as a problem in himself. I think that today, his political position has hardened. I know he's made videos lately that are repeating talking points from the pro-gun lobby from the 1980s that weren't even believable or credible in the 1980s. He's using tired old memes about, oh, well, the Nazis would have never come to power if only there were more guns in the streets of Berlin. And, that's sad in many different ways. It's sad partly because it just shows Vegangains and Ask Yourself have this in common. I don't think either of those guys have ever read a book. I mean, I don't think he's read one book on the history of what happened in Berlin when the Nazis rose to power. I don't think he's read one book that describes the gun violence that was on the streets, from corner to corner, from coffee shop to coffee shop, from pub to pub, in the years leading up to as part of the rise of the Nazis, and the role of gun ownership or guns being really available there. It's a lie built on a lie built on a lie, and it reflects a really kind of bad set of motivations on his part. But those political beliefs, which are his beliefs directed outward, I think in large part they reflect a self-justification directed inward that he doesn't want to deal with anymore, what I've just suggested, that if he applied rationally his own standards to himself, as he would apply them to another person in that situation, another person with the same symptoms, stockpiling arms, acting out on the internet, making threats on the internet the way he is, I think part of him feels a great sense of shame and guilt that he really does believe the police ought to intervene in those circumstances. He believes the police ought to intervene against him. And it's easier for him to subscribe to a kind of ersatz right-wing ideology, which I know he didn't believe in just 2 years ago, because I used to talk to the guy. He used to describe himself as a socialist even. It's not that long ago. He used to describe himself as quite left-wing on a number of issues and generally. But he's now putting together a bird's nest of bits and pieces of political ideology that are projected outward, their claims about society, their claims about the world, but I think their real psychological function is projected inward. It's a self-justification in the strictest sense of the term.